Call this meeting in order. All rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we added under old business, we added items 7D and E. This is relating to the Jenny O'Turkey land option and the Joe Ike land option.
We get approval of the agenda? We get a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Open forum, anybody who want to talk? Four, a consent agenda, approval of the minutes, approval of bills and purchase orders, approval of investments. There's some gambling resolutions. Can I get a motion to approve?
Make motion.
Give a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Let's see, 5A, Stearns County Attorney Report. Not here yet. We'll put it further down in the comments. B, Planning and Development Director.
Just to give you a quick update on Meta board meeting last week. Nothing too urgent, but we did have another application approved for the deferred loan program. So that would be our fourth approved by the Meta board. We did have a fifth application come in this week, so we still have enough funds for about 5 or 6 more projects. So just keep trying to get the word around for that. Got an update on the 400 block. Sounds like the Alias building is structurally reinforced now, and hopefully next week demolition can continue. And then for as far as a couple items coming up on the agenda later tonight, just to touch on them. We did get a letter from Jenny O'Turkey today saying they would like to move forward to land option. So there's an item coming later in the agenda. Also, Melrose multifamily. We did have a meeting with them this afternoon, and they were able to get their numbers together. Like I said, we'll touch on that later.
Police Department, Martin Report, Chief Moss.
For December 2016, we had a total of 25 citations in the traffic area, 123 verbal warnings, and 19 written ones. For 2016, we received 334 calls or requests for service, and last year was 323. We ended on ISR 4,028, and last year was 3,229, so we're 799 above last year for overall calls. 26 agency assists, pretty common with those. For the most part, that was it within the office. Some of the things that we worked on in the last month or so, we did sign a working agreement with Anna Marie's Alliance, which is the domestic abuse shelter in St. Cloud, and basically all it says is that we're going to provide anything from our office that will allow to assist the victims of domestic abuse and their families to get any services they can. So it's an annual thing that we do. Just want to make a council over in case anyone wants to. With the police reserves, we'll get the semi-annual report, get it out of the way as well. They're doing everything we expect them to do. We are always looking for more reserves, so anybody that feels they have the time to commit, 12 hours per quarter right along, and then any details where we need them to work for the parade or a school event or something like that. It's pretty minimal, but it's a good program, good way to get involved in the community. So.
Craig, you and I talked about this a month or two ago. I apologize for not reminding us to bring this up tonight, but the smoke detector program that with the Red Cross, can you just give a short update on what that is?
Yeah, the Red Cross has 300 smoke detectors available. They're the new lithium style where they last up to 10 years based on the battery life. We're going to be working with the fire department here to get some real dates set. The last one we had were too much of a crunch, so we're going to work out. But they're free of charge. Just contact. We'll have sign up at the city center. We'll get more information out on that. And then basically what it is a firefighter or a police officer or somebody will install them, order them, up to 3 per household and free of charge. Red Cross is just trying to get these out there so that there's, injuries or fatalities based on a fire. And there's no economic restriction or anything like that there for anybody. Even if you have hardwire detectors that can be mounted right next to them or in a different part of the house as well. So we'll be getting dates out. We're shooting for a March area, but we gotta nail some of that stuff down.
Yeah, I was asked a question this last week and I didn't know what to answer. Your agency assist, 26, I think you had said this month. How is that reciprocated with other agencies assisting us? Is that a give and take? Is it usually pretty balanced? What's the...
Yeah, and that's kind of I know when Mayor Vogel was in the office, he had questions about that. Are we getting the same, is it 50-50? And it's not quite 50-50. What happens with agency assist, we run a SOT center, help them on calls, we help the sheriff's office, and so does state patrol. And then if they are coming into town to do, say, a warrant service on one of our residents, and they say, hey, would you like to come along either for officer safety reasons, or you know the parties, maybe have a better chance of getting in the door and get this person to court where they should have been, that gets counted as an agency assist as well, because they came in asking for our help, basically. We've tried to keep things as consistent as we can, as well as with like the helicopter coming in. Sometimes it's requested by the ambulance, it gets listed as an agency assist. Sometimes it's requested by a hospital, sometimes it gets listed as a business assist. So there's some number or some ways of coding it that make it ambiguous, I guess. So we're just trying to keep them as consistent as we can, but yeah, it's not 50-50, but I would say 60-40, 55-45, we're pretty consistent, so. It's the beauty of working on the west end.
Yeah, I don't know if I should talk to you or Scott about those properties that we've been having some issues with.
Scott's in the process of working with the courts, getting court dates for the current ones that we have on the books. There's some e-filing with all that, so it's a little bit different system than what we're used to, but that's all in the process. And then I dropped off 3 new ones for consideration, so those will be working through the process. Those will probably come up on the February meeting. My assumption is there will be much movement moving here, so we'll be hoping to see the light move forward. So there's a total of 6 that we went through just in this process that we started with the agencies.
Anybody else have any questions? Good. City Attorney report, Scott?
Yeah, this is like the December meeting. First thing is we're the JO project and more information's coming up on that, but at least on my end, completed the annexation. And we got the final order from Minnesota Boundary Unit, and we filed that with all the appropriate other agencies, state and county. So I think that's kind of what we've been waiting for, so we can move forward and we can receive that on the 6th this month, and we are 2 weeks later, and things are rolling. So that's going. Let's skip down Director Creed and mention the deferred loan program. I just spent a little time as they're getting up and running, making sure we get paperwork in order and come up with a process of procedure for payment bills and then filing documents with the recorders. We got a process in place, the nuisance actions that you asked for. We had, you guys approved 3, and we gave them 30 days from when they were served, and so we had to, some of them took a little longer to track down than others, so that put us in January, and then I've been filing, I've got all of them filed with court, and we're going to get them on the court calendar. One of those 3, Chief Mouse told me that, they might have gotten back on the cleanup. So then I'm working to try to pull that back out. So we got 2 of those pending yet, and then the other day, 3 more. So it's the same process, and we'll get back rolling. Another one was here, it's really good to pass on. Just keep the process rolling. So we're taking a civil approach, civil process, and at the end, we want to be able to, you guys have had a chance to look at this one, like the city, which is going in there. Most of this is just state roads. The city can just put in there, get it up to all the way, the cost of the ability to pay it or get it assessed on taxes. So that it's a long way around, and we're trying to make sure that we can get the city reimbursed. It's all said and done. So that's kind of my report. Anything else that you guys have questions on?
All right, thank you. 5A, Fire Department Semi-Annual Year-End 2018. Proposed budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tessa Boyning's on vacation today in Las Vegas, and so she's asked me to present to you the fire department's annual budget. We do this a little different than we do the general fund budget, and the reason we do that is because we work with the townships. So what we're looking for, as of right now, the fire department budget is the same as last year, with the exception of one change, which is a $2,500 increase to the remittance for the retirement fund. And that was discussed at the last council meeting. So there's really no change in that operations. The other thing, just to draw your attention to, is that we're able to provide a credit back to our township members in the amount of $7,400 in the year 2017. And the year 2018 credit, we anticipate a $3,500 reimbursement back to those townships. And where that number comes from and how we can do that is because we have a minimum threshold of a $50,000 designated operating cost reserve for the fire. So if we ever have to have any type of reserves, this is where we keep our numbers. So we'll levy it at X, but then if we maintain that operation, we'll give it back to our partners. And it's been working very well that way, and the township, I believe, appreciates it as well. The townships have, because of this scenario, we have had a very incredibly stable and secure operation with that fire department. The only other thing I want to draw your attention to is this will be the 5th year in the year January 1, 2018. This will be the 5th year of our participation in PDRA for the firemen. And that's currently managed by the state of Minnesota. With that, we have an allocation that we can make an adjustment to compensation for the retirement fund for that. So what we've done is we've asked the state to do a projection for us to figure out how much contribution we can put in towards that fund using the contributions we get from our fire insurance as well as this contribution that we're doing here. So when we did this just under 5 years ago now, we were looking at up to the $1,900 a year. We were really close to being able to do that. However, we were conservative and we stayed at the $1,500 mark that we're contributing to the firemen. And again, this is paid for from the insurances that people pay as well as the interest that's generated from the fund. So we've asked for a couple different scenarios from PARA to tell us if we can raise this number, because that number hasn't gone up for will be 5 years in January of 2018. So that will be coming up at a future meeting, but I just wanted to let you know about that, and that should have zero impact to the fund and how much is contributed by the fire department, Melrose, and then the townships. But it is still a guarantor that that it reaches that number. So if the markets don't do as well, then the city and the townships would have to partner. But we haven't seen that happen in 15 years. So, having said that, I don't have. The only other thing I should mention is the cash reserves for our set-asides for the vehicles. It's $116,000. And that money is set aside to replace vehicle equipment, replacement set-asides each year. We also have $36,100 in the budget annually to go towards capital, so we can pay cash for these fire trucks instead of having to do capital equipment certificates and so on and bond for it. We can just write a check out and pay cash for it. It's, again, very fiscally responsible to do it that way, and then we always know what we truly have. Otherwise, that's all I have for you this evening relating to the budget. There's no change besides that $2,500 from the previous 6 years actually. So major compliment to the fire chief, and Tessa, and the department for them being able to keep those numbers at where they're at. So, pending your questions, I would recommend to approve it as presented, and also to acknowledge that we will be formally presenting this to the township at our February 23rd council meeting, which will be at the fire hall, joint meeting with the township. Yes.
Okay. So can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
We sneak Ms. Kendall back in?
Yes.
Excellent.
We won't make you wait till the end.
It's okay. There's a fair penalty. MapQuest says 41 minutes, but I can tell you it is more than 41 minutes. And I can only exceed the posted speed limit so much. Just saying. They write me too. I get no special guidance. I've got 3 different things for you here. Oh yeah, I should have done it that way. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? If you guys are okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation as I hand things out here. 3 different things we're going to talk about. First, let's talk about diversion. The cases that we do not end up prosecuting because they're first-time offenders, and the state says, I'm going to do it this way and hand them out. The state says that we need to have a program that allows for first-time offenders, that we just don't toss people into the court system because we can. There we go. Now we'll get on the record. There we go, so everybody at home can hear me too. First thing we want to talk about is diversion. And the cases that we have is to say that are first-time offenders and they come into the office. We changed our diversion program dramatically in the last year. We have one person who does this for the entire county, and as we're going to talk about, crime numbers are up rather dramatically. Child protection is up even more. We've got a lot of things incoming into the office. And the county board is not going to give me another person to not prosecute stuff. So as we look at what we're doing, we did some research into the kids that we were bringing in, especially the kids, more kids than adults sign up. And we found that we had kind of a class of kids that we were calling in and spending a bunch of time with, that if we would have just sent them a postcard and told them to knock it off, that probably would have accomplished the goal. And we looked at the kids who ended up paying the fine and going to court, the kids that were coming into the office, and frankly, 98% of them were going on to sin no more. And we were spending all this time and effort, and we weren't really getting any better bang for the buck than the kids who were truly first-time offenders and went to court and paid their fine. So we started an online course for them. I will readily admit to you that I resisted that for as long as I could because I just don't think online is the same as a conversation. But if paying your fine is the same as a conversation and you don't have any more problem, well then apparently we didn't need to spend our time on those kids. So we now send those kids through an online course, and we now have taken the next group up. And we've had very good success with these kids. These are kids that are either have gotten through diversion and have now committed another offense. What's up with that? The first time they're making a dent. And then a second group of kids where you had 3 to 5 offenses in a very short time period and something's obviously going on with you. So we're pulling those kids in when we're spending time on that. The news for the city of Melrose is we used to have all those first-time kids doing 10 hours of community service, and now that they're just taking an online course, we don't have quite the pool of people to complete community service for you. However, we really didn't need them to do that extra time and effort to make the point. So these kids are still doing community service, but there are less of them overall that are going to be doing the community service. Not to say that they can't do things in your town. 2 of them were from your town in this last year, but commonly, like a kid from Albany would probably rather not do his community service in Albany. He'd rather come up here and do it for you, and your kids might rather go to Eden Valley or wherever they go. So we do spread the kids out in that way. So if you have city projects, some painting, some cleanup, something that these kids could be doing their service on, please let us know. But we have changed this dramatically. We used to deal with about 70 people a year. Now we're dealing with over 200. So we're getting a better reach and a better bang for our buck on the diversion program. So there's that. Now, this is your city council numbers, your city prosecutor numbers. These are going to look dramatically different next year because what they did to us in the middle of the year, the state court administration decided that rather than the police officers sending the tickets to the prosecutor, they needed to be filing them directly with the court. Now that's good in terms of the multiple times that this information would get entered into our system and the police system and the court system. Now it just goes straight to the court. But we don't get all the numbers anymore. So if I tried to give you a report that looked like last year's, I literally can't do it because as of July 1st, the tickets didn't come to me. So what you're seeing this year are the cases that we had somebody actually come in and fight about. This is not a fair and accurate depiction of all of the cases that came through our office. These are the ones that I can look you in the eye and tell you for sure I know about because somebody pushed back on them. But if you look at the second page and the third page, actually this third page, these are the tickets that were filed with the state court administration since July 1st. You'll see there are 214. Okay, you guys are writing a goodly amount of tickets, quite a few. Ironically enough, very few of them are being contested, just saying. And when we looked at the number that are contested so that we can try to get a picture of, if I could even tell you if these numbers are up from year to year, we found that across the cities in the county, probably 10% of the tickets end up getting contested over time. But you never know if one of them is going to be a jury trial, and one is going to be a court trial, and one is going to be just a conversation with the prosecutor, and then everything settles once the officers show up. So I don't have the amount of measurement data for you that I will have next year and that I had for you last year, because state court administration changed the rules in the middle of the year. I didn't have anything to say about that, but you can see from what I did get from them in the second half of the year, exactly what tickets were filed by the Melrose Police Department, or the state patrol in your jurisdiction, or the sheriff's deputies in your jurisdiction. So we'll have a real good picture of that. And when you look at this, the middle page, those are the things that happened in Melrose that my office covers regardless. So this includes not only the misdemeanors with your city attorney, but the felonies, the things where somebody could end up in prison. And you can see that you had 14 of those last year, 16 this year, and I can tell you looking back over time, that's pretty consistent. Back when crime went down and the economy went in the tank, crime dropped. The economy came back, crime came right back up. I don't know why, it just happened that way. And you had 8 to 10 felonies back there, 11, 12, 13, and now you're back up in that 14 to 17 range of felonies. And I do have a full list of who those people are and what they did and when they were filed. If you look at that, obviously your police chief has all that information as well. But when you turn to the final sheet that I want you to look at, that one that talks about crime across the county, crime's up everywhere. We went over 1,100 felonies last year. We hit just about 1,100 the year before and 1,100 last year. Crime is just up across the board. And when you look at that upper left-hand criminal filings, those are again the felonies where somebody might be going to prison. Only 16 of those are yours of the 1,100 across the county. And when you look down below as to what those are, you can see about half of those are person crimes. So that's domestic violence, that's sexual assault, that's child abuse, that's people getting robbed. Down by St. Cloud State, the crooks all know that the victims are there and they're easy pickings. And that's the reason that's dangerous down there. It's not the kids causing trouble, they're drinking, it's what kids do. But the crooks all know they're there. And so they're easy pickings, and that's where you end up running with some of those numbers being higher. In the middle there, child protection, as you may have heard if you're listening to the news at all, that is up across the state, it's up across the country. Unfortunately, I can tell you that's primarily physical abuse. So some of those cases are also appearing as crimes, but certainly in a child protection situation, you need to get involved in those. The only good news on this page is look at that juvenile delinquency dropped right through the floor and is remaining down there. I can tell you that Mark Sizer, the head of Human Services, says that's because they're all on their phones. You don't have time to go out and cause trouble. I don't know why, I'm just glad. Again, I wish I could tell you more of why these things are trending up and why they're trending down. When we see crime trending up, it's bad that more crime is happening, but I'm glad we're catching them when we're able to prosecute them. And I'm glad less juveniles are committing crimes overall. But that child protection piece, we're going to pay for that. We're paying for it now, and we're going to pay for it down the line if we don't figure out a way to get our arms around that and what's going on with those kids. So we do have a number of things we're doing in the office. CentraCare reached out to us. We now have a Child Advocacy Center. We're doing a bunch of work with them on prevention. When the doctors call the lawyers and offer to help, we answer the phone. And that has been a very fascinating project to be working on now. So we've got things going on to try to make this better. Questions?
I did have one. Just a quick question. I'm looking at the number of felonies from the year 2000, and you touched on this already. From the year 2000 to the year 2016, that's a 110% increase.
Yeah.
Do we have any assessment in regards to what that is? Is it a definition in regards to the types of felonies, or is it really that many?
My county board asked me the same thing. No, unfortunately not. There were a couple changes along the way, where strangulation, for example, became a felony, but that might account for 10, 15 a year. You know, not a doubling of 500 to 1,100 over that time. For whatever it's worth, this happened across the state, across the country. It wasn't like it was just Stearns County where things suddenly skyrocketed. One of these was, the jumps was around the time I was elected, and initially people tried to say, oh, that's because she's in the county attorney's office, she's charging all these things now. Really, I wasn't even there when they were charged. I happened to kind of come in the middle of that, and as you can see, that was certainly a blip on the screen compared to what's going on. And it has been countywide. You can see the same thing in Sherburne, the same thing in Benton, the same thing in the metro. So the good news is we're only 10% of what the metro is, and they've got half of the crime in the state happens in the county.
Are these increases seen more so like in St. Cloud or college or?
Yes, I would say generally, not just the college, the higher urban metro areas, to the extent that there are drug crimes, and when you look at the drugs, that's just as many officers as they want to put on the street. If your chief had one person working full-time drugs, you could probably entertain one person working drugs. We're on the I-94 corridor, Highway 10 comes across 23, we're at Crossroads and we're in College Town. But
Is that
you kind of see,
Is that possible, like we see Stearns County drive through town quite a bit?
it's certainly part of what we're seeing on sex trafficking, for example. However, you put up an ad in Sauk Center and they got 32 calls within 24 hours. So it's not just there. I think it's your local, police are going to know more about what's going on in your local town just because there's less people to watch and a little less area to cover. But at the same time, if you get that spread out too thin, I understand you're looking at adding resources. They're doing a good job. They're going to do a better job. If you're looking at some retirements coming up, we're seeing now a lot of cities start to look at that they get other people kind of in and grabbing the road before they lose anybody. It's Wade Park's, high density. Had a conversation with the Wade Park City Council. We are not their city attorneys, but we brought them the data. And they're like, well, aren't we kind of like St. Joe and Sartell? I'm like, no, you're not. You're not. Your population may be numerically the same, but with their big box stores and their high density housing, we're seeing it more in those areas. But it's a a little creep up for you guys going to 14 to 16s. It matters to you.
I could probably ask Chief Moss too with this, on the no driver's license and no proof of insurance, like in here from July, it was 74 and 20. Is that kind of common throughout the county, towns, communities, or, and then also, what is the penalty for this?
Why do you want me to?
Carry it. Or how can we lower it down together? Like no proof of insurance, if they don't have insurance,
Right.
it's the honest people that end up getting stuck with the bill if there is an accident or something like that. So, is there any way of putting some teeth into that?
No insurance, for example, no driver's license is one of the places where they actually created a statutory ability to work to get your license back. Because we'd rather have you have a license rather than be driving after suspension, driving after revocation. If you need to get something done to get your license back, then let's just do it. And we participated trying to help people with that. The no insurance, we've seen those go up and down, kind of it depends on, and are these just the top charges? When it came to my office, I can tell you exactly how this went, but like if you have a driving after suspension and a speeding on there, do you know if those are both on here, or did that just come up as one?
I don't know how they do that on the backside.
We don't know yet. Because what it might be is 77 speeding stops, and in 20 of those, they found they had no insurance, and in 74 of those, some of these might be doubled up. And because this is the court's count at this point, I don't know that. But by next year, I will have that broken down. I can tell you that what we see in most cities is the speeding enforcement they do is because people complain about it, and usually about the third person they catch is the person who called to complain about it. We see that consistently in St. Cloud, I can tell you that. St. Cloud probably only runs traffic when they're asked to, and it's because they get complaints. But each city has a different way. Sauk Center writes quite a few. Avon writes a ton. You guys know that, right? If you go through Avon. I mean, there are just some towns over time, it used to be Way Park, DWIs, now it's our town. There are some places that just have different focus on enforcement.
Justin, you have any questions?
So I told my chief deputy, they always have questions and all those, which is good. That's good, you guys are paying attention, I appreciate it. I was in Rockville last night, different set there. I got to swear everybody in Rockville. That was awesome.
Next year, maybe, come here.
No, that is cool. Being elected, I get it. And especially if you have new people who are elected and your phone now rings at 2 o'clock in the morning because people just got to tell you again what's going on. And you'll answer that phone every time you will, you watch. It's just how it is.
Well, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. We appreciate working with you. We love your police department. They call us all the time, and when we call them, they always answer the phone. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. Sorry I was late. Couldn't drive that fast.
All right, we're on the action items. Ordinance number 1-19-2017, an ordinance amending Melrose City Code Chapter 151, closing the board.
Scott? And, you know, we've had the housing code for a number of years now. And, you know, one of the reasons we have it is it lets us approach folks with, this is what we're starting to see problems with, roofs deteriorating, sidings peeling, you know, those sorts of items where the property is starting to look bad. It's also through the housing code, that's how we try to get a handle on rental properties. You know, so if you're gonna be a landlord in Melrose, you know, rental license, and then those properties get inspected so we know that they're being kept up and maintained. If we've got a problem with a rental property, we got a little bit more of a leverage on this, because if you don't clean it up, we can pull your license and you can't rent the property anymore. If it's a homeowner, and we're starting to see some more of those, and I got a stack of them from Chief Mouse, we don't have as much leverage. If, you know, it's a violation, we could let it up. I don't know if it's a payable or is it misdemeanor. But, you know, the problem is that, you know, the door is kind of hanging off and the place hasn't been painted in 15 years. You know, paying a misdemeanor fine or the payable fine is a whole lot easier than doing the work and getting it done. And so we're trying to get a lever to try to get people to do the work. And so what this amendment is saying is that a violation of our housing code is going to be defined as a nuisance. And we can then deal with those the same way we've been dealing with these other nuisances. You bring them in here and hopefully if just the, I suppose it's the equivalent of the being in the stocks in the old days, you know, you see your name in the paper and it's on the TV and maybe people clean up their property a little bit. And if worse comes to worse, we get the court order. You know, we gotta get this done. So we're looking for more tools. And then again, if it's part of a nuisance and the city is going to some expense to get that done, we can try to recoup those costs by having an assessment and collecting the taxes. So we're just trying to step up our enforcement to a few more tools. So yeah, by adopting this, we're saying violations are a nuisance and we can enforce them the same way we do under our nuisance code.
Any questions?
Does this fall under the zoning ordinance?
Yes. No, this is a separate, It's a separate, I mean, the zoning,
So this doesn't have anything to do with planning and zoning board?
this is a separate chapter in the city code. There are some kind of aesthetic items in the zoning code, but, this is more, if you go into this section, it deals with, making sure the properties are watertight and those types of items.
This housing code is that does that end up bringing some of the big city issues into a small town?
When we adopted the housing code, I think it was because we had some of the big city issues at that time. We had a shortage of rental housing or whatever the problem. We didn't. We had houses that were had 10, 15 people living in there. And it was a mess. And they were complaining, you got cars, you got trash, you got noise. And we didn't have tools to enforce them. And so we adopted this, and then to be honest, the big reason we were concerned at the time was to try to get a handle on rentals. And I think we've done pretty well on that here. We have a lot of those issues. What I'm hoping is that the same thing we saw with the rentals is that when we adopted it, we had a couple of hearings where we called people in for the city council and say, here's what's going on, and the order was, you guys so many days to correct this, or you're losing your license. And once we did, once that was done a couple of times, and people said, oh, this is serious, we had a lot of problems with like we were having with rentals. And so I'm hoping we'll see, at that time, say 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have a lot of properties where it was an owner occupied and then we're keeping them. And now we're starting to see that, and we're having to look at how do we put some pressure on those people to take care of your property. And again, it kind of comes down to the complaints are coming from the person who's diligently keeping their property up, and we get the city next to a tip.
Thanks.
Yeah, I guess, I read this out, but I only think this, adding this new section kind of leaves it open for interpretation. There's,
Well, what we're adding is, like at the top, we're adding that whole paragraph. And the effect of that is just to say that, if you don't comply with our building code, it is not only a violation of the building code, but it is a nuisance, a public nuisance. And the language then below is saying that, if it's a public nuisance, we can treat it the way we already, the nuisances we brought for you already. So the first section is to define it as a nuisance. And so you're not, what we're going to have is we're going to have an underlying offense. Broken windows, paint, roof, and the police will bring this to the person's attention. Usually they give them a long time, and if they still don't do anything about it, then we would schedule a hearing and have them explain to you, why they haven't done it, and you would have the opportunity to issue an order saying, you do this or else.
does this give, say, you look nice to someone that doesn't necessarily keep up their property, does this give, or not even that they don't keep up the property, they don't keep it up in their neighbor's idea of keeping it up, and they come to the city and they say, I want something done with that property.
This chapter 151, the housing code, it's very lengthy and it's fairly specific about, and we're not going into people's houses, to see if the plumbing is working. It's mostly what you can see, and so you've got to be able to point to something and see. And I think what we're seeing a lot of is that the exterior is not being maintained. It's not just a matter of the neighbor doesn't like the color, so we're going to declare your house a nuisance. But,
Because
we've got rotted boards and it looks like there's water coming into your
I
house.
see those types of things aren't listed here, it just basically it's kind of general, it says public inspection, they are unsightly decrease adjoining properties, your property, they adversely affect property values and patterns.
And that's, it's almost like a finding. But we're not, but you're right, it doesn't say what poorly maintained is.
It's kind of left open to judgment.
So we won't, you wouldn't come in and say, okay, we got a violation here of 15102C, and it's poorly maintained and it detracts from the surrounding. We would have to come in and say, okay, we got a violation of 151 something that talks about siding or roofing or windows. So you've got to have something specific. And we're not going to, that we're asking you to address, not just the neighbors took a vote and decided your home is unsightly.
That's kind of what my concern is, that we have no teeth to these things, and all of a sudden you have another 100 violations and nobody did anything.
The ones that we've been looking at,
house.
the ones that we've been looking at and trying to address. Bad roofs, bad siding to the point where it looks like there's water damage because the elements are getting in, and windows and doors are broken and not repaired. So it's not. And those would tie back to specific violations. You don't get a violation of this section. This section is just declaring violations of the code requirements to be a nuisance. So if you want that purple house, you can have the purple house, but you can't let it peel and fall into disrepair.
Council to give consideration to adopt ordinance number 1-19-2017, an ordinance amending Melrose City Code Chapter 151. Can I get a motion to approve, please?
I'll make the motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. B, liquor license renewal applications. One is intoxicating liquor on sale, off sale, and Sunday on sale renewals. Any motion to approve them?
I'll make that motion.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 2, club and Sunday on sale renewals. Any motion to approve, please?
So can we just do all those at once? We still, yes, we can, right, but so. We just do all,
Can you get a motion to approve all of them?
yes.
I'll make that.
Okay.
Okay, and then a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Mayor. Patty, could you just clarify to the council, is there anybody new?
No, these are just the annual renewal notices to the existing establishments here in town, so. Thank you.
C, 2017 seal coating project. Mr. Mike?
Mr.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we've prepared the plans and specifications for the seal coating project. I do have extra maps if anybody does not have one. And then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The estimated project cost is under $100,000, so we don't need to go through the formal bidding process. We can receive quotes for that amount. And so we're looking for direction. We certainly can go through the formal, sorry, you guys are through the formal bidding process if the council would prefer that. By getting quotes, we're still going to get the same people that normally bid the project. We're just going to save advertising fees. So just looking for some direction on that. If we did want to bid it, we could put the ad in the Beacon on the 25th. Bids would be opened on February 8th. We could have the information available for the council packet on Friday. Oops, I got a typo there. January or February 10th. So otherwise, we would get the quotes out and get quotes back within 10 days.
So you just get quotes from a couple of contractors instead of?
Legally, we have to get a minimum of 2. Usually we get about 4 bidders. Aztec, who usually gets it. Then Pearson, Allied, and then there's a couple others that have given us quotes, but they're usually high. And we would certainly send them out to anybody who wanted them, so.
Side note, your project manual, I think it was called on this deal that you sent along. It's like a 100-page document or something. Did you see one?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that standard
I assume you
contract.
just put our logo on there. You didn't write that specifically for us for this.
No, a lot of it's standard contract language. I mean, insurance requirements, those types of things. But yeah, yeah, the only part that we typically write is the special provisions. Even if we get quotes, we'll still require a bid bond, 5% bid bond, the same insurance. Everything would be similar. The contract would be the same. It's just the advertising part of it. So.
Yeah, well, I had one question just with the area. When we did our drive along, didn't we talk about the back of the fire hall?
That was done last year.
Was it done last year?
Yeah.
They missed it initially, but then they came back.
They came back.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
Yeah, and then if you notice, the City Hall parking lot will be done this year.
Is there any questions? All right.
What is the publishing fee that we're saving by not?
It's a couple $100. It's not huge. Patty, would you say that's
I would
about? Yeah, it's not huge, but I don't know that we really gain anything by it. With the internet now, we put it on Quest CDN. and
It's on Quest.
Yeah.
Does that qualify for putting on the bids?
Well, if you need to bid it, it has to be in the local official newspaper, which.
That'll change someday as we.
Yeah, it will. And that's probably a 100-year-old rule when you didn't have the internet, and people only read, local contractors only read pretty much the local newspaper, but.
Provide consideration to see quotes as outlined. Can I get a motion to approve it then?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Sorry, Carol. No offense, Carol.
Mr. Mayor, I do have an update on the 3rd Avenue project, if you'd like to hear that now, or I could wait till the end of the meeting also.
You're up there.
Okay, we had hoped to have the chlorines done. They attempted to do them when it was 20 below zero and the equipment kept freezing. So they actually came back yesterday and did the chlorines. The results verbally were very favorable. We had about 3 inches of bituminous and they thought about 12 inches of gravel. So what I did today was I ran some, excuse me, I ran some pavement design numbers, looking at an estimated 3,000 cars per day. Gary kind of did some counting. The state has a typical schedule for heavy axle vehicles. The 5-axle trailers is normally a little bit under 1%. I think because of the feed mill, I bumped that up to 2% and 3%, which would give us between 60 and 100 heavy 5-axle tractor trailers per day, and ran those numbers. And with the gravel that's out there, I think we can remove the 3 inches of bituminous and put in about 4.5 inches of bituminous, and that'll give us a 10-ton road with a 20-year design life. So, and we are on budget for what we had in the proposed budget. We're within $5,000 either way, I think. So we're going to be moving ahead with those plans. We also did include replacing the rings on the manhole castings and catch basins. They get cracked. Sometimes they'll get gravel that moves in. So I'm going to bid them all. We're going to make it apparent to the bidders that we may not do them all. If they're in good shape, we'll leave them alone, but if they need to be replaced, we'll replace them. So we haven't gotten the official report back from ITT yet. So I would ask for authorization to go for bids on that tonight, but I want to get the official soil boring report back just to make sure that what they're telling us verbally is accurate. So we'll bring the request authorization for bids back at the next council meeting, and then open as soon after that as possible. That one will have to be advertised because it is over $100,000. So are there any questions on that one? One thing they did mention, Gary had asked me to, up by the feed mill, where the trucks come in and out on the scale, the road is broken up pretty bad. So there's about a 100-foot spot in there that we'd like to tear out and repair. They did do a coring in that spot. They did find some buried topsoil. So it's good to know. We'll be able to dig that out and get that repaired and get that part of it done.
Just a curiosity on that note, since we have 18-wheelers coming in and out of there turning sharp all the time, would that be a candidate to put a little section of concrete in there?
I would, yes.
And I'm not saying we should do it, just a thought that came to mind that would...
That's a perfect application for concrete. We didn't budget for that, and I could certainly run the numbers to do that, and if you'd like, I could send out an email and you could kind of give me some direction, or I could just bring it to the, the unit prices are probably going to be fairly high because it's a small job.
Right, that's what my concern was.
But yeah, but
It's a small section.
yeah, it would be.
It'd probably be a deal, but, I don't think we can approach Munson and ask them for the help with it, but,
It'd be nice to see alternate pricing for that section of, say, concrete instead of...
Yeah, I mean, that is the best long-term fix. I mean, we could double the thickness of bituminous and that's going to help, but in the hot weather, bituminous shoves with the turning, and the trucks are hard on it. So we'll come back with an alternate number on that.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Resolution number 2017-7, resolution establishing a fire escrow account. Pursuant to the Minnesota statute section 6580.50.
I'm going to turn this over to Scott.
Yeah, this is something that, again, trying to, figure out ways to give the city a little bit more tools to work with. And we discovered, that Minnesota statutes, the 65A deals with fire and fire insurance. just by adopting a resolution, the city can set up a fire escrow account. And then we notify the Department of Commerce, who in turn notifies insurance companies that are do that type of insurance in the state of Minnesota. If there is a fire and there's a claim that's going to be paid, the city of Melrose would be notified, and then we would have the option of, telling the insurance company, yeah, we want 25% of that payment put into the city's escrow account, and we're going to hold that to make sure that the property gets cleaned up in the area. Where I think, like an example of where it would have been nice to have something like this in place is several years ago, the Peterson house, we had a fire there. And that house had a mortgage, it had insurance. But after the fire, it sat for a number of years, and the owner walked away, and I'm assuming the insurance company scooped up, or the mortgage company scooped up whatever insurance there was, and finally the city ended up going in and doing the work to getting it torn down, and our only source for getting reimbursed was to assess it on taxes. I don't know if we've ever recovered it. No, maybe not. Because, assuming if they walked away, nobody's paying the taxes, and then it goes to default. If it ever gets sold, we can add it back on. But, someday we might recover it, but in the meantime, the city has fronted all the costs. It may be a long time before we get those back. By establishing this escrow account and getting on the Department of Commerce's list, we can get money up front. So if it comes to the point where the city is doing the work, we know we got some money to pay for it. And again, it's an optional thing. You take it on a case-by-case basis. Just because the money's there, you don't have to take it. If you're working with the property owner and it looks like they've got plans and they're reliable, you don't have to fund the escrow. But if you've got something that's saying, boy, I don't know about this one, I think we better get the money up front because we might be the ones in and doing the work. You can do that. And then if they do follow through and arrange the work, then the city just pays their contractor. The contractor gives us the bill that, okay, I did the work, and then we pay it. So it's just a way of trying to protect the city's finances if we have, one of these disasters and somebody decides, like with the Peterson house, that they're just going to walk away and leave a mess for the city to clean up.
Would you want to restrict it just to fire?
We do. It would be nice if we could expand it, but it's the statute is just limited to fire.
I was just thinking, wind damage or something.
Yeah, but it would be nice if we could just kind of expand that and just tell you whenever they got a claim, let us know. We may want some of the money, but it's limited only to fire. And I think they're thinking that that's a little bit more of a catastrophic, and the city, because we left holding the bag, it was a pretty big bill, so.
This is across the board, got residential, commercial, industrial.
Yes.
To be honest with you, I don't know if I like that concept. It just seems so big brotherish. Right away, government swoops in and takes 25% of their insurance settlement and says, we don't trust you. I understand the desire to do that, to secure, say, some money to put on the block of the type thing, in hindsight. I just don't know. Just don't know if I like government taking 25% of insurance check.
Well, and I think there's also a messy side to this, because, let's just take the 400 block, for example. Obviously, it doesn't apply, but let's just take that for the example. And after 45 days of nothing happening, Melrose can act. Okay, so now we go ahead and act, whatever. But Chad's already got a contract with Landwehr to start some of that work. And now, if Landwehr, we come in and step in, now Landwehr has an agreement with us, where's that contract? How does that money get released? I mean, there's just a lot of different moving parts. I like the concept, I like the idea. I guess my question would be is, let's say that we did have this, and you've named one example. Let's say we have had this for the past 30 years. How many times do you think we would have invoked it?
I don't.
Once.
Twice.
Pay for the $25,000 debt that the city's paying for on the 70% house.
Well, and look, 28 years ago tomorrow, the whole crap plant started on fire. That was a miserable mess with us.
You take 25% of that insurance money and stick it in your pocket. You know, that's pretty invasive.
Well, and I think the point is it's designed to be flexible. Like say, you get notified that it's available, and you have to, if you don't say anything, after 30 days, the money is released to the owner. So you have to affirmatively tell the Commerce Department, yes, you understand that. And the other item then is that, it says if they don't act within 45 days. That's a floor, not a ceiling. You have to give them at least 45 days, but if they look like they're moving along in good faith, then it's going to take more than 45 days. That doesn't mean that you have to step in and do something and spend the money. If you're thinking about with Chad as an example, he was here right away. So I guess the question is, if this had been in place, would you have even taken the money? Or would you said, no, go, Chad, keep moving forward, the check, take your insurance proceeds and do what you gotta do.
Is there any requirement of the insurance company to notify the homeowner that this is now a policy? Because if I'm John Q. Public and I'm paying my insurance.
What happens is that the Department of Commerce notifies the insurance companies. And they maintain a list. You can go on their website of the cities that have adopted this resolution and agreed to maintain a fire escrow account. I'm assuming that year in, year out, that this escrow account will probably be at zero, because you're really only looking at a catastrophe, and then looking to see, well, is this a situation? Because I know we've had smaller fires where the place wasn't destroyed, and the homeowner fixed it up right away. And so, would we have taken that? Taken this step? It's gonna call for kind of case by case judgment.
And we said case by case judgment, and that judgment is basically the governing body. And now we have the church sitting there, nothing's happened with it. We could have enacted this on the church property also. So that,
To me, it's a slippery slope to be on.
Yes.
As this body sitting here.
Yes. Because this body changes regularly, so.
And I think you would probably need to look at some guidelines, because, a call is going to come to the city administrator's office, and we've got 30 days, and hopefully there's a council meeting, but I think we're going to have okay, here's the things we're going to look at, and if you got a list of 6 items, if you can really check 1 or 2 boxes, maybe you say, give us the money, if we can check 4 out of 5 boxes, then you won't take your money. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you want to, you'd have to develop some policies and guidelines as to when you think this would be appropriate and when you would not want to do that, so that people get, it isn't like you're treating different people differently for no apparent reason.
Guess, do you have any other questions? I guess I do see both sides of it. I totally understand. You guys want to see, if you want to do it now, fine, or do you want to just see how this process turns out here, or what are you thinking?
Well, if you call for a vote and it doesn't get, doesn't pass.
All right, well then, I'll call for a vote.
Or a motion or whatever.
Is there a motion to set up a fire escrow account with, and notify the Minnesota Department of Commerce? Looking for someone to make a motion. I don't know. All right.
Thanks for your work on it, though, Scott. I can see both sides as well, so, and I know it was a lot of work put together. Thank you for that.
No, it's, found out it's out there, and we'd be remiss if we didn't put it out to you.
Okay. Craft lot, Melrose multifamily. Better do that. All right, fire department member hire.
The Melrose Fire Chief, as well as the Deputy Chiefs, are recommending that we make a temporary adjustment to our staffing levels at the fire department to go from 30 to 31 members for a couple different reasons. One is we have one of our returning, we have an ex-member who's come back to the community, fully trained, qualified, just needs to get his refresher training to come back on board. And we also have one of our firemen who's going to be on an extended military leave. And so we feel that the chief feels it's prudent to backfill, to have 31-member fire department during this absence. And then upon somebody's retirement, we would not backfill that, just go back down to the 30-member. There's, as written in the memo that we have here for you, it's less than $1,000 that can be supported with our current budget to bring this person on board. Since we have the person transitioning in a military leave, that you won't be seeing that type of expense. So, pending your questions, it's staff's recommendation to approve the hire contingent on preliminary and physical and temporary, and to increase the number to 31.
Any questions or concerns? Motion to approve.
I'll make that one.
Take a second, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. All right, we're on old business. Police officer hire.
Okay, at the January 5th meeting, we had a discussion related to what we were going to do with staffing when Officer McDonald's on his military leave for up to 400 days. And then there was a question related, how does this get funded, or how does this work down the road? And that's where Finance Director Tessa Bunning, Mike, myself, Diane, and talking with the officers in our department, trying to figure out how is this cost effective, where do we find the money, and is there money to do this? You guys received a spreadsheet with several different options on there. One being the recommendation we have is hiring back a 5th officer that was removed from our department back in October of 2012. There's another variation where we could use the part-time staff we currently have and contract with the county for any additional shifts for the cost of the city, as well as just continue as we're doing right now, going from our 4-officer schedule that we have down to the 3-officer schedule, and using our part-time staff as much as we can to fill any of those gaps in employees. So, I guess what we're right now we're looking for is still the consideration of the council for the 5th officer position. open for questions. I know that I've received some calls from the council members already regarding some of these things, but if you need clarification on anything that's in here, Mike can speak to some of the numbers, Diane can talk about the HR side of it, and I talk basically about operations. So I think we're covered on all the ends.
So some of the guidance that I gave Craig is that as of today, we know that we have 3 officers. And so that was the model that I told Craig to move forward with, is a 3-model department, and that's what he's built his schedule on. So Craig, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? And then talk a little bit about what a 4-officer department looks like. And then talk what a 5-officer department would look like, what you would give up and what you lose or gain with those 3 different options.
With our current schedule, we're meeting the minimum hours of coverage that we can. So it's working single coverage, which we've done under the 4-officer schedule. It does give up any extra day officers to work to assist me when I can go to meetings, to have our contacts at the school, and do any extra follow-up that needs to be done during the days. Our night cars have worked alone since the October 12th, or 2012, so that's been something we've been used to. But it does eliminate some abilities that we would have to do nuisance enforcement. Would be one thing. We'd still be able to do that. It'd just be probably on an extended time frame because of the ability for me to go and initiate these things and hand it off to the other officers to go out and actually get them served. It'll slow the process down or eliminate it at that time, depending on what's going on for investigations or anything else. Traffic enforcement would probably dwindle a bit as well, especially during the daytime hours when I'm at meetings and trying to keep caught up with things. Weekends, day shift at this point is what we have for open, and that's what part-time is expected to cover. As of now, we have the schedule made out through March, and we're about half full on it, hoping to get the rest of it filled, but what does not get filled, I will be covering on the day shift. So that's where we get into the extended shifts of 15, 20 days in a row, those sorts of things. My hope is that doesn't have to happen, that part-time can chip in, but 2 of them have other employment. The other one's a seasonal employee, but has some family things going on right now where he can't necessarily cover the kids when he's got to be gone as well. So we do have some limitations with our part-time staff. So that's our 3-officer schedule. Another issue with that is the way it's spelled out now is there is no room for vacations. Without the hope of part-time being able to shake loose and pick some of those things up. So that would mean we'd have the accrual of vacation all year long, which would either need to be carried over upon the request and through contract, or would need to be paid down, or however the city would deem to take care of that at the end of the year. Concerned with that is obviously officer burnout, working extended shifts, and then not having any time off to spend with family, friends, or doing whatever else. So that's the biggest concern, is working the long stretches and then not having the time off to enjoy on your own. Another area related to that is, like I said, the accrual of the vacation. I would rather see my officers have the time off they need to recharge and come back to work ready to go than come back and put a warm body in the car and put their time in, which can get dangerous after a period of time where just going through the motions. The areas where we are lacking is, like I said, with part-time help, that would be scheduled overtime for some of the officers, which then extends their work week longer, cuts in their days off or their vacation time as well. So there's some areas that are a concern. 4-officer schedule has been working out fairly well. Gives us some ability to hopefully move people around or put in for overtime and those sorts of things, and we try and manage that as best we can. It seems to be working out pretty well from where we've been at. Going to a 5-officer schedule from the one we had back in 2012. That gives us a lot more flexibility in the scheduling. Somebody is gone for a situation like we're in now, we could work them with a 4-officer schedule, carry on coverage as normal, and be able to do business as we have been. Once that officer would return, we'd be up to full staff, and we could provide better schedules and better coverages for the city and for the officers, so they're not working those big stretches like we currently have on our schedule. So there is some benefits to the 5th officer. You know, like I said, one of the biggest things is that we'd be able to provide better coverage, and that's something that's always a concern, is are we covering everywhere we need to be when we need to be? we can't be there 100% of the time, just because we can predict that would only need one of us, and hopefully that'd be me, and I don't have to worry about this. That's kind of where things are at for the most part. One area that I didn't think of much of until the last week or so was if we contract with the county for any extra hours outside of what the part-time officers would be covering to maintain that 4-officer schedule, would be records. I talked with Judy, our secretary, and we tried to figure out how would that work. Currently, everything, our Melrose officers, everything goes right to her. She can tap, 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 does everything the way it is. If there'd be a sheriff working in town, they would work with their records department, and then it'd have to get funneled back to Judy, and Judy'd have to work things out. And we're not exactly sure how that looks yet, if that's the route we need to take, and we're not exactly sure how much more time it's going to be for her to cover what they did on their time in our city to try and make it all jive in the record system, so that the city of Melrose still gets credit for what work was done on their time. So those things are still being looked at and trying to get figured out. Is it efficient enough to do it that way, or is it counterproductive in the long run for the record side of it anyway to work in that manner? I haven't gotten any official yes, no, or anything from the sheriff's office. They were going to look into it and see if it's something that they'd be able to do. They are losing a member, if not two, also to military this year, so that short-staffs some of their crews. So they want to make sure if they're here for the contract, then they're able to cover it. If they're getting paid for it, they want to be here for it. They don't want to shortchange anybody that's expecting them to be here. So they did do this for Stock Center a number of years ago on a short-term basis for like a week or so, and apparently it worked out. But I don't know what a long-term situation would look like with an existing police department of our size and of our call load to be able to do that. So those are discussions we still need to have.
And that would obviously be, I think we heard it last time, comes their own car.
They bring all their own stuff. They bring their own people, their own insurance, their own vehicles, fuel. It's all covered under that $55 an hour contract price. They run under their own policies. So there's some things that they do differently under policy than what we do. But as overall law enforcement, they'd be able to do anything and everything we do, just maybe handle it in a slightly different manner.
Straight to starts now.
Potentially.
The model that you ran, Mike, with numbers, excuse me, where you did run a contract model, was that assuming a 4-officer staff?
Yes. It was considered to be so there's a six shifts per pay period. So what we did is we took 3 shifts with a part-timer. Then we took 1.5 and 1.5 of those shifts for a total of 3 shifts between overtime call and then getting our additional part-timers to come. So which is roughly about the same price as it would be at that $55 an hour per year. So when you look at the Excel spreadsheet that we have here, under a 3-person shift, a 3-person staffing model, you'd be saving the officer's wage on this. If you go under the scenario for staffing of a 4-person department and utilizing the part-timers and utilizing the county sheriff's office, it would cost the city roughly $5,000 more estimated annually if we do that for this year, 400 plus days. So roughly $5,000 in 2017 and roughly $15,000 in 2018 additional costs.
I think, since we went to the hall, everybody has a car all the time, and working at home. But I get comments about people like to see police cars out there. You feel a little more secure just having a police car sitting in your neighborhood. And I think that actually does have an impact on people's minds when they drive by, or the kids that are thinking about doing something. I don't want to say public safety, but when I see, like, you go around the mall and stuff like that, you see public safety vehicles driving around. And like you said, you can't do anything because you're public safety, you have to call the police department. But, you know, we have a police reserve, and I'm just throwing this out there, right out in left field, but, you know, I have them just patrolling. We don't have police reserve vehicle anymore. We used to have one years ago, before Explorer, with lights on it, but it just said, or police reserve or something. Is that anything that we should even discuss, having a, you know, maybe the reserve like that, being on patrol and be seen, at least you get the presence out there, watching, you know, like the neighborhood watch tape.
Is the intent to, during that period, then, would that be an intent that we would not have a licensed officer on at that time, and it would be the police reserve?
Believe it or not, or maybe like a supplemental thing.
Okay.
Okay. Public reserve driving around on a weekend night, if we really, I don't know if we have double coverage now and ever or not.
I see what you're saying.
But I didn't know if, you know, in order to obtain that would be. You know, I don't know if we have any uncovered time right now. That might be an option also. I mean, they can, obviously radio, Stearns County, if they need it. Again, traffic stops.
No.
Basically, no.
The only ability the reserves have is an extra set of eyes. They are able to, in effect, an arrest with the direct direction of a full-time officer. So if we need their help to put some cuffs on people, they can do that with our direction, but they can't initiate that themselves or carry out any Minnesota laws or ordinances. And the only concern I like the idea. The only concern I have is when we still wore the baby blues.
Yeah.
The reserves look very similar to the full-time officers, and it was the differentiation between.
Sure.
You don't have the abilities that this person does, but you know. And now that we go to the dark blue uniforms, it'd be better. It'd be easier to differentiate for a person looking for help or a person looking for an emergency situation. Be able to recognize that immediately, so they can get concerned. I think if there's a full-time officer or an officer working with them as well, I like that idea.
Get back to the debating of what we should do. I don't know, the whole, what is the right amount of coverage? That's the $1 million question. The uncovered time, not uncovered, unpatrolled time. Contract is Stearns County. Since this is a temporary issue, ABC coverage would help, but you know,
So, are you guys all able to take your vacation using that area?
The previous time we had this situation, we did ask for an extension to carry things over because, and that was a 4-month area. And we had to carry things over because the 4 months that the house would come back. That was granted to carry over what we had on the books with a deadline to use up the full area. A full year, that'd be very difficult for everybody to use what they have.
That's going
What they're supposed to use.
That's going to the 3-man.
That's what a 3 hours.
Yeah.
Another thing about a 3-man too that I'm not really comfortable with is having anybody work 20, 25 days straight. And you're right, there's burnout there. You guys need time off to decompress and recharge and whatnot. But then I look at the other side of it too and say, well, what financially makes sense is for what the dollars were at the end of the line. I don't think that hiring a full-time officer right now is the right answer. I honestly like the contract. You know, because there's going to be times when part-time can't do it or life happens. But then we still can fall back, hopefully, you know, obviously you haven't heard back from Stearns County yet, but we can fall back and they can pick up shifts to get your coverage, to get the vacations, the weekends off or whatever, so that you guys can still operate and be human, you know.
How much overtime do you feel is okay? Yeah, you know, I'm sure the guys don't mind.
With the 3-officer schedule we're working now, they're working 8 on, 6 off. of those 8, 7 are night shifts. I know from working them at night number 4 and 5,
It's a big grind.
you're hoping that light comes at the end of the tunnel, depending on how busy you are and those sorts of things. When you start tacking on those extra shifts, especially in the winter time when things are quiet, but it does get to be a very long stretch, and you're, like I said, hoping for the end.
That again is on a 3-man thing.
That's on the team, man.
Yeah. You don't have that overtime issue as much on a 4-man.
Right. We were able to shift some folks around a little bit there, or it doesn't require us to demand their part-time as often. So they try to be open when those come up, as opposed to now where we have, it'd be Saturday, Sunday day shifts every week. We need them to make the schedule work under the 3-officer department. So it's a little more difficult when you have 3 of them. One of them works every other weekend. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, I need you to work the next 3 weekends in a row. Can you do that for me?
Do you think you can get to the 4-man schedule with the Starks County contracting put together?
In the part-time.
Yeah, kind of part-time.
I would hope so. The issue we'd have with that is just making sure we have commitment from part-time far enough in advance. Like I said, they don't know their spouse's work schedules far enough in advance a lot of times, so it's usually a week and a half before this, and I can grab that for you. Otherwise, and I would hope that a month out we could say, yep, these are the ones that the sheriff's office needs covered, these are the ones that we have covered. But the reality is that they don't necessarily have schedules for their spouses or for their needed daycare on those shifts to say, we're good to go. So
What is Stewart's County schedule?
they have their schedule for a year. Ours is written out for a year, but it's very fluid.
Justin?
I don't know, I just feel that this is more directed towards all you guys. I'm kind of for the 5-man because numbers are, your call numbers are up. Obviously, if we're gonna make any cuts, I just feel it should be towards the police department. We want this town to stay safe. It might, the 1 year, it's basically blank, and then the other 2 years, we gotta figure out where the funds are, but this only gets terrible. Well, the funds are there somewhere.
I guess I do a lot of ride-alongs on Insomniac. I don't sleep anyways, and I just wish that I could get you guys to go with these guys and see what they do. It's tough. It's really tough what they go through. And like you said, they'd rather have the excitement stuff going off, but there's just nothing. Or when you're trying to follow a kid that's running through the alleys, you don't know what the heck's going on. Or you got the one kid that's calling, they're on this side of town, do what you gotta do. And it happens. I've seen it with them. It's tough. I don't think it's getting any easier in town. I'd like to find some funds. When we had the double coverage on the weekends, definitely made a difference. There's one time when they had an incident in town, the police officer, thank God he was only a quarter mile away. Otherwise, I could have definitely been in a hurry. Untold stories of what the police do in our town, and but 90% of it we never hear about. Definitely encourage each and every one of you, ride with these guys on a Friday and Saturday night, not just till 10 o'clock, but till 2 o'clock, and just see what you go through. It's not that, Melrose is a safe town, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in this town. Nick, want to say something?
I don't know. I look at the police officers and understand, I think I understand what you're going through as far as your work and pressures and hours, and night shifts and all that stuff. It's not a fun job when you gotta rotate shifts and stuff like that. I understand that. I kind of look at the budget, you know, as far as the representation from the city side of it. You know, a fourth of our budget goes for police protection. And is that a big number? I don't know if that's a big number in relationship to other things, you know, but a fourth of it goes to police protection at this point. And then now we go to 5, you know, I don't know, you know, relate to other cities. What does it do, you know, in other cities? But maybe the alternative would be that maybe what we could do is kind of hedge. And so at this point here, we go with the 4-man thing with the hired help and in the county if they're willing to go with it, or the part-time help. And then when McDonald comes back from his military leave, maybe try and continue with the part-time people to get, like, instead of a 5, you go to 4.5. I'm just hedging my bets. That's all I'm talking. But I understand it's not an easy job. I know my dad was a police officer, and I sat in the car with him many nights. And it was in a smaller town than this, and I tell you what, it was boring. I never want to be a police officer. Every once in a while, you get a young kid that wants to check out his mufflers and exhaust and his tires, and away we go, you know. But I don't know. It's not an easy job, I know that, especially nowadays too, it's first yet, so. My hat's off to you guys that do serve on that fire or police department here. Looking at the dollars and cents and then your job, again, my idea would be to hedge a little bit and try to work both sides of the street. That's my thoughts.
I think I'm kind of following that logic also. With the budget, you know, ideally you'd have 115 police officers in town, because then you got on every corner of the block, and nobody's going to try to do anything, right? But it doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter how much somebody's going to do something. They're going to do something. Their mind is made up, no matter how much police protection you have. You know, I can't imagine doing a job, because obviously, you know, I can appreciate that. And you stick your neck out for everybody else. So. But obviously, we have a budget to look at. We have to balance everything else also. If we can get over this point when early, schedule-wise, I think we should probably at this point pursue that option. It's a tough subject, though.
Do you feel like comfortable, excuse me, but do you feel comfortable with going with the 4, you know, with the 3 and the part-timers and the company? Would you feel comfortable with that?
If we can get the county on board, I think it can work. We will lose some local flair with that, because they do rotate their areas and everything. So even if they were on schedule for 3 days, scheduled for Melrose, you won't get the same day.
That means you have to actually stop at the stop sign stick.
So there's some concerns about continuity in town. I don't know that maybe the sheriff's office would, because of the size of our department, say, okay, if you're the deputy that's working for those 3 shifts, you're assigned all of the 3 shifts. That should be.
Okay, if that's what you want to go, do you think you could at least give us, an update on how it's working out with the guys?
That'd be good.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, what staff would need then is a motion from the council to say, negotiate with Stearns County for the gap in our coverage. And then we would just coordinate for a 4-person department, and then provide monthly updates like Craig would do anyway for his department. And if there's issues, we will be back before you your time.
Is there such a thing as modeling after a 4.5 person department?
Well, like guaranteed hours for a part-time or something?
Well, like I said, if you guys take, take my line of work, for example. Nobody works 40 hours in my line. 45 is regular, it's technically 5 hours overtime, right? And there is a comfortable line of overtime in my line of work. I don't know if that's true in yours or not, but I would assume that, some sort of overtime, it's all right. But as soon as you cross that threshold, now it's a little bit uncomfortable, and if it's something where it is something, as Joe was saying, with the constant updates, saying, we're just not getting the coverage. So we staff it at 4.5 using Stearns County and part-timers or something like that. And I don't know if that works or not.
Yeah, but
It's balls and see what works.
Yeah, basically the idea I have in my head for that is that you just basically have a budgeted amount for part-time that would be scheduled. Right now they're on an as-needed basis, it would just be scheduled, similar to what we're going to have to do this year. But unless you can find that perfect person that is getting into law enforcement, they don't have any other full-time employment, or they have the flexibility of, JJ always said, let's find that farm kid from around here so that Pops will let him off, and he can throw bales once in a while, but he'll let him off when we're at the road. Those are the folks we were always looking for flexibility reasons, but those are few and far between, obviously. You can't live off of 10 or 20 hours a month. So, yeah, the possibilities there.
Please make a motion.
I'll make that.
First and a second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
So this is, I just wanted to
What
remember
the
that,
hell?
and part-time and,
And if and when that does take place, I think there should be something in the paper to let the people know that, the sheriff, the county sheriff are going to have jurisdiction. Maybe a little more involved with our local enforcement so that they're aware of that too. I think that'd be good.
Absolutely fair.
Yeah. Good idea.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just one last thing here, just a little caveat here. We do have Officer McDonald here. This is his last meeting with us here until he's going overseas for a little while to support our country. And as being a guy who's been there, done it 3 times, it's really appreciated what you're doing and what you're going to be doing for your family, and we'll be here for you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Where are you being deployed to?
Cuba, Guantanamo Bay Detention Center.
Okay.
Yes.
Isn't there only 45 prisoners there?
I think it's on
Tomorrow, there might not be any.
You didn't park over yet?
Oh, no, seriously. He's done in lots of areas. But again, thank you. We'll be sure to take care of your family back here.
All right, we are on stable business, draft law, development, multi-family resolution number 2017-9. Mr. Mike?
Mr. Mayor and Council, we did have a meeting with Melrose multifamily today, and they were able to get their margins together, and so they would like to move forward with the project. So calling for a resolution to establish a municipal development district, and that would include both the craft site and the 400 club.
So we need to set up a meeting then, or?
So what simply all this is this is just calling for a public hearing to formally consider establishing a TIF district. There's several different hurdles that need to occur between now and when this will occur. Specifically, the AMAC report, which is an environmental assessment determining what the requirement would be to secure the site from an environmental perspective, plus the city would have to formally enter into a development agreement and, they potentially honor its preliminary development agreement terms. So there's still several hurdles to go through here yet, but the developers have agreed to the conditions that the city's laid out to them. And they feel that they can build a 32-unit market rate tuck under parking facility on the craft line, so.
And just go along with that, AMEC and MPCA did reach out to us this week. We have a meeting scheduled with them next week to go over the environmental rack plan.
So the only thing you're committing to tonight is a public hearing to continue these discussions.
The preliminary development agreement, is that negotiated and closed?
Yes. But which is now public,
It is
yes.
public, so when we did that, we were led to believe that this would be mid to upper scale living. Yes?
Yes.
And as they've gone through their value engineering to get this price point that they've been looking for, have we lost any of that mid to upper scale living that they told us we were going to do? Because that's, as I hear constituents, that's one of their biggest concerns. It's not only that it's not low income housing, but what is it going to turn into? And when we say mid to upper scale living, we're talking about some of the nicer facades, steel siding instead of vinyl siding, maybe some ephes or brick on the front, and not just very entry level. Those sorts of value engineerings are what people are going to be concerned about. And then lastly to that is that while we do have the preliminary development agreement and final development agreement, for as long as we have hooks, I'll call them, that they must maintain it as such and can't bring it down into a tax credit housing or a low income housing as long as they have the TIF run.
To quote unquote, to reiterate what they told us today, I asked that specific question of the developers, and what did you guys do to make this adjustment? And what they told us they did is they changed from some tip up concrete to poured concrete, which I guess is a cost saving. Instead of having magic pack individual heating units, it's going to be a boiler unit for the entire complex. They're going to use tall frame construction. I don't know what that means versus the other construction that they were talking about doing before. They're still going to have the steel siding. They still will have the brick facade.
Yeah.
They still will have what type of windows did they say today?
They changed the number of windows.
Yeah.
They changed the front of the building a little bit. It's not going to, the doors and the entrances aren't going to stick out as far as they originally had planned. They're going to bring it in a little bit. Decks are going to look a little different.
Cantilever decks versus
pillars or something like that. And they also, Tracy, myself, and Mike also asked them to do a little write-up so that we would be able to provide the council, the mayor, others, basically the specifics of what they did to get to this point so that it could be corrected.
That's the concern I'm hearing. So that's just want to voice that.
Okay. Justin?
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
It's not that often I get that.
So how do we want to do this action item?
So you would just need a motion to approve the resolution as presented, then Patty will then update all the names and stuff.
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. D, Daniel Turkey Store TIF land option resolution number 2017-8. For the public hearing. Mike?
We got some good news from Daniel Turkey today. They did send us a signed letter saying they would like to go through with the land option out of the site that they have chosen. So this would just be to call for a public hearing and to set up a TIF district as well.
Any question on that?
Yeah, I do. In terms of public subsidies, if you will, is this the first official nod that we've really gotten from them to
It just is the
commitment?
Yeah.
That's going to happen. That's what this is saying.
Well, what this is saying is that they're going to buy the land. And then from here, the city will then have to go through the tax increment process. Then they have, I believe it's up to 1 year from the date of closing to actually break ground. Otherwise, the land reverts back to the city. But this is
They're indicating to us their intentions.
yes. because they're going to put down some pretty significant dollars, and this is wonderful, wonderful news.
So, can I get a motion for that, please?
I'll make that one.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. B is land option agreement from the lakes.
This is the same thing. Now, with this development agreement, the city is now also obligated, because Jenny O has executed their land option, we now need to formally obligate ourselves with the Joe and Melissa's property as well. So we're looking for formal permission from the council to authorize me to send a letter to Joe and Melissa to say that we're going to exercise the option. And we would close at the same day, same time. They give us a check, we give them a check on the exact same time.
That's right. We have light up front. Later date.
Well, we were working out that kind of some of the closing details here with Scott and Mike today, and there's going to be some hopscotch a little bit, but it'll all be hopefully simultaneously.
But that's all called the option itself.
So can I get a motion to approve that?
So move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 8, new business, that's in there. 9 is informational items, schools and campuses. Public Utilities Commission meeting minutes. Annual city council, city and townships, special joint meeting. You get a
Mike,
motion?
we were thinking about moving our regular meeting over to the regular.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, well, because we have that township special meeting after the next February meeting, we were thinking of holding our regular meeting also.
We did that last year too,
Yes, we
right?
did.
Last 2 years.
Just 2 years.
So February 23rd.
The first one, we held ours at 12. Last week we did at 5, we told 6. No matter me.
Keep it up. We're gonna do 6 and keep the agenda light, because we don't want to move it.
I know, that's why last year we did at 5:30.
5:30.
Well, we can always recess.
Not to do that.
Until after, so, it's like, we're able to have the council meeting here, and then also we work out, we have to recess the meeting to the firehouse.
Just let me know so I can pull, because I will have to time change, and now I'm changing the location, I should post it.
It's 5, so it's 5:30.
Okay.
Everybody good with that? Motion to adjourn? Can you get a second, please?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you.